It's a funny thing about being human, isn't it? We all, chase after things, that next job or a better relationship or just feeling like we finally, I don't know, arrived.
Right, that sense of there.
Yeah. But you have to wonder sometimes what's really driving that chase? What do we actually want when we say we want something specific?
That's such a crucial question because, well, our conscious reasons, the stories we tell ourselves, they might only be part of the picture, maybe just scratching the surface.
There's just like a whole other layer underneath.
Definitely. You could almost think of it as an inner theater, a place where desires and motives play out often without us being fully aware of it, shaping what we strive for from behind the scenes.
Wow. Okay, so it's like searching for something, maybe like a lost key.
Yeah.
But we're looking in one room, the conscious room, when maybe the key is actually hidden somewhere else entirely, somewhere we haven't even thought to look.
That's a great metaphor. And, if we bring in someone like Freud, he had this term, Wunsch.
Wunsch, like W-U-N-S-C-H.
Exactly. Wish. But it points to these really fundamental drives, these wishes that can be operating pretty powerfully without our conscious say-so.
So I might think I'm working hard for a promotion because I want the money or the status.
Right, that's the conscious explanation.
But this Wunsch idea suggests there could be a deeper, maybe even contradictory wish pulling the strings.
Precisely. The thing we think we're seeking might actually be masking something else, something obscured by, well, all sorts of things. Repression, fear, what society tells us we should want.
Okay, let's make this more concrete. We looked at the case of, let's call her Anna.
Anna.
On the surface, things look pretty decent for her, stable job, friends, hobbies, that kind of thing.
Yeah, ticked all the boxes.
But she described this like persistent feeling of dissatisfaction, just not quite right.
A kind of chronic, is this all there is feeling.
Exactly. And when you asked her, okay, Anna, what do you actually want?
Yeah.
Say things like success or recognition. She wanted to feel like I matter.
And those are very understandable desires, of course, but it's important to consider, are those the root desires? Or are they perhaps symbols?
Symbols for what, though?
Well, potentially for something deeper. Placeholders, maybe, for unmet needs from much earlier in life? Childhood stuff, perhaps? Or yearnings that feel, I don't know, a bit forbidden or unacceptable to her conscious mind.
So, okay, when Anna says, I want success, could that really be like a coded way of seeking something else? Maybe trying to finally get that approval from a parent she never quite felt she had?
That's exactly the kind of connection we might explore. And this leads into another related idea, tribe.
Drive. Okay, try. How's that different from Wunsch?
It's maybe a bit more complex. Think of drives as these powerful internal forces. They're shaped by both our biology, our nature, and our experiences, our nurture, and they are constantly, relentlessly seeking expression.
Even if we try to push them down.
Especially then. So Anna's intense focus on career achievement, that could absolutely be a kind of displacement, a redirection of energy from a more primal desire, like a need for love, real security, or maybe a fundamental sense of autonomy, of being in control that perhaps she lacked earlier on.
Gotcha. So the success she names isn't the ultimate goal itself. It's more like the vehicle that this underlying, maybe unconscious drive is using to try and get somewhere.
Exactly. Especially if those more fundamental needs, those earlier wishes, have been somehow blocked off from her awareness, pushed away.
And how does that blocking happen? Is that the repression you mentioned?
Yes, repression is a key mechanism here. If a desire or the feeling connected to it feels too dangerous, too shameful, or just too incompatible with how we see ourselves.
Or how we think others see us.
Right. The mind can kind of push it down out of conscious thought into the unconscious, but, and this is crucial, pushing it down doesn't make it disappear.
Right, it's still there, exerting pressure, like holding a beach ball underwater.
That's a perfect analogy. It takes effort to keep it down, and it's bound to pop up somehow, somewhere. Maybe not in its original form, but perhaps indirectly.
So for Anna, her constant striving, needing that external validation, the accolades, that could be the beach ball popping up.
It could be. It might be the manifestation of that deeper, unacknowledged need. Perhaps a need to feel truly seen and valued for who she is, fundamentally, not just for her accomplishments.
But she hasn't connected those dots consciously.
Not necessarily. Her focus on achievement might function as a defense mechanism. It protects her, in a way, from the original pain of that need perhaps not being met earlier in life, maybe by parents or caregivers.
Wow, okay. That sheds light on Anna. What about Marcus? His story was quite different.
Yes, Marcus. He presented a fascinating conflict.
He spoke very clearly, very consciously about wanting freedom, like
Yeah.
really craving it.
Escape from constraint.
Yeah. But then his actions, he kept ending up in situations that felt the opposite of free. Dead-end jobs he hated, relationships that felt toxic or limiting. He seemed to avoid taking risks that might actually lead to change.
Marcus is a really clear illustration of this internal tug-of-war we often see. His stated desire of freedom is directly at odds with his behavior patterns.
It's like one foot's on the gas, the other's on the brake.
Exactly. And that kind of pattern often points towards ambivalence.
Ambivalence, meaning he wants two opposite things at the same time.
Precisely. The simultaneous existence of conflicting feelings, desires, or impulses within a person. It's incredibly common.
So part of Marcus genuinely yearns for that freedom, that open road.
Yes, the conscious part, perhaps.
But another part seems to be actively, if unconsciously, preventing it, sabotaging it.
That's one way to look at it. What could be driving that resistance? Often, that stated desire, like freedom, might clash with a powerful unconscious fear.
A fear of what, though? If he wants freedom.
Well, maybe freedom also represents something scary. Perhaps a deep-seated fear of abandonment rooted in early life. Or maybe a fear of the unknown, the responsibility, the potential loneliness that true independence might bring.
Okay. So the very thing he thinks he wants also carries this hidden threat.
Potentially, yes. And his actions, staying in those stuck situations, might actually represent what psychoanalysis calls an unconscious compromise.
Unconscious compromise. Explain that a bit more.
Think of it like the psyche trying to negotiate between two powerful conflicting needs or fears. It finds a solution, but it's often a partial one, ultimately unsatisfying.
So neither desire gets fully met.
Exactly. But neither is completely ignored either. By staying in those dead-end jobs or difficult relationships, Marcus might get a kind of distorted sense of security or predictability, maybe?
Even though it makes him miserable consciously.
Yes, because that familiarity, however uncomfortable, might feel safer unconsciously than the perceived dangers of real freedom. It's a hidden negotiation happening below the surface.
That makes a disturbing amount of sense. The fear associated with freedom, the unconscious fear, might be just as strong or even stronger than the conscious pull towards it.
It really highlights the sheer power these unconscious forces wield, doesn't it? They can steer our lives in directions that baffle our logical, conscious minds. We know what we want, or think we do, but these deeper currents can pull us elsewhere entirely.
It really does make you think about yourself, about your own declared desires versus what might actually be going on underneath. It's like we each have this, hidden map inside us, a map of desires, fears, conflicts, and we're only consciously aware of a tiny corner of it.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it, a hidden map. And, one place we sometimes get glimpses of that hidden territory is in our dreams.
Dreams. The royal road to the unconscious, as Freud called it.
That's the famous phrase, yes.
Yeah.
Because the usual rules of logic and repression can be a bit relaxed when we stray.
Okay, so let's talk about Sarah. She had that recurring dream, right? Standing at the edge of a cliff.
Yes, Sarah's cliff dream. Very evocative imagery.
And the initial thought might be, well, that's about indecision, fear of taking a leap.
Certainly, the cliff edge often symbolizes a critical point, doesn't it? A moment of potential transformation, but also risk. The fact that she's recurringly at the edge suggests an ongoing internal conflict, a hesitation being played out symbolically.
So maybe she's grappling with a big life decision in her waking life. Like, should she leave a relationship or change careers?
It's highly possible. The dream could be staging that ambivalence, feeling pulled towards making a jump, taking a chance, maybe into the unknown.
But also held back by fear or maybe the comfort of the familiar, even if it's not ideal.
Exactly. The dream becomes a space where this push and pull, this unconscious conflict, can be expressed visually, metaphorically, even if she isn't fully processing the depth of that conflict while awake.
It's amazing, really, how these weird, sometimes nonsensical images our sleeping mind creates can be so packed with personal meaning.
It truly is. But it's not just dreams, is it? Our waking life, our everyday habits and patterns can also be clues. Well, think about repetitive behaviors. Rituals we perform, maybe little compulsions, even persistent habits. These can often act like signposts.
Pointing towards what?
Towards those underlying tensions, those unmet needs or unresolved conflicts we've been talking about. Consider someone who consistently overworks, for instance.
Okay, consciously they might say it's about ambition, getting ahead.
Right. And that might be true, partly, but unconsciously. It could also be a strategy to avoid something else, like feelings of emptiness, maybe, or insecurity. Staying busy, constantly achieving, can be a way to shield oneself from confronting those uncomfortable inner states.
Or what about self-sabotage? Like Marcus, maybe, but in smaller ways. Someone who always seems to mess things up just when they're about to succeed.
Another great example. Consciously, they might fear failure, but unconsciously, maybe they also fear success.
Fear success.
Success can bring its own pressures, its own visibility, maybe its own kind of vulnerability, or the fear of losing it all. Sabotaging oneself might, paradoxically, feel safer in some hidden corner of the psyche. It avoids the bigger potential fall.
So these patterns, even seemingly small ones, they're not just random quirks, they're meaningful.
They often represent symbolic expressions of these deeper dynamics. The key then becomes learning to, well, listen inwardly, to pay attention to the more subtle signals.
What kind of signals should we be looking out for?
Unexpected feelings that bubble up, intrusive thoughts that seem to come out of nowhere, memories that keep resurfacing, maybe unprompted.
That sudden jolt of anxiety when a certain topic is mentioned. Or feeling weirdly resistant to doing something that seems objectively good for you.
Exactly. Discomfort, resistance, defensiveness, feeling disproportionately emotional about something. These can all be flares indicating that you've touched on sensitive, perhaps buried material.
Wow. So it's like our unconscious is constantly trying to communicate, but maybe not in straightforward language, more like hints and symbols.
That's a good way to think about it. It often speaks in the language of metaphor, symptom, dream, and behavior pattern. Understanding our desires, then, isn't of finding one single definitive answer.
It's not like solving a puzzle and being done with it.
No, not at all. It's much more like engaging in an ongoing dialogue, a conversation between your conscious self and those deeper, less accessible parts of you.
A dialogue where insights emerge gradually, maybe unexpectedly.
Precisely. And through that ongoing internal conversation, through learning to notice and decode those whispers from the unconscious, we can start to make more conscious, more intentional choices about how we live and what we pursue.
So the goal isn't necessarily to eliminate the conflict or the hidden desires, but to understand them better, to bring them more into the light.
I think that's a very insightful way to put it. It's about embracing the complexity, the richness, the sometimes contradictory nature of who we are, recognizing that what truly motivates us is often far more layered and fascinating than our simple explanations allow. It's a lifelong exploration, really.
A continuous deep dive.
Exactly, a continuous deep dive into the self.